This is Steve Sykes-Nova with the second conversation from the farmhouse of the evening. I just finished talking with keyboardist Tom Brislin about his involvement in the Sin 2008 project, and now I have on the line from his own studio, where he is right now working with Steve Nardelli on what is going to be Big Sky. I have the former leader of the British band It Bites. He's worked with Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. He's worked with Elton John, Carlos Santana. I'm talking about Francis Dunnery. Good evening, Francis.
Hey, Steve. How you doing? Are you all right?
I am doing just fine. I'm so glad to talk with both to you and Tom in one evening.
Yeah,
And maybe we can even get Steve Nardelli to the phone later on. I don't want to interfere too much, because you're actually in the studio right now working on Big Sky, am I right?
I am the one doing all the work, too. He's upstairs drinking tea. He left me down here in the studio.
Well, let's talk about... Now, I went ahead and, with Tom, I talked a lot about the sound of Big Sky and where that's going and so forth. You are the man. You are the producer. Am I correct?
That's true, yes.
Okay. From your perspective, and I must say, the Gully Flats Boys, which I've been enjoying tremendously, is just so well produced. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to do with Big Sky. From the producer's point of view, and from being a musician, what is it? What are you thinking right now as far as how the production of Big Sky is going to go? Where, is this going to be a complicated project production wise? Is it going to flow? What do you think?
Well, I just think I've listened to a lot of the Sin stuff, and I was involved with the last Sin album to a degree. I was going to go out and tour with them and stuff, but it fell through because of scheduling and stuff like that. We're both very busy. But the thing that always struck me is that, if you sit down with Steve and he plays you a few songs on the guitar, just how actually remarkably unique and soothing and fantastic his voice is. And so the whole thing is based around his voice. I think it's probably, it's very tempting when you're a musician to go and make every song 17 minutes long and play like fast solos all over the top of it and stuff like that. But I looked at the strengths of what we were dealing with, and I think lyrically he's absolutely fantastic, and I think his voice is just unbelievable. So I'm not really trying to get in the way of his voice. That's what the production is going to be like. It's going to be mostly around his voice.
And that mirrors exactly what Tom said. And that's one thing. I'm a huge Steve Nardelli fan as far as his vocals go too. And you've been very public about that on the Aquarian Nation site, as far as what an excellent singer he is. When Steve first burst back on the scene with the Sin and with Chris, he doesn't sound anything like John Anderson, and a lot of people, of course, expect anybody that sang with Chris to sound like John Anderson. But Steve's voice is wonderful.
It truly is. He has there's a kind of smokiness to it. It's like a husky smokiness to it that I just think needs to be very loud on the CD. People need to hear his voice, and that it shouldn't be drowned out in 25-minute long guitar solos but what he's tending to do. I mean, when you come from a progressive rock end of things, it's always tempting to do that. But I think what we've been progressive in the sense that the songs are remarkable. They aren't, we're not trying to be like commercial or anything, commercial album, but they are truly progressive because they're very interesting. They're extremely interesting, and the arrangements are very interesting. But we'd never lose sight of the main focal point, which is Steve's voice. And I'll go to my grave saying that, because that is the strength of this album.
Well, it's one thing coming from musicians that aren't wonderful singers themselves, but you're not only are you an incredible musician instrumentally, but you are a wonderful singer.
And, thank you.
Oh my gosh! And your voice. I was talking to Tom too, and Tom is a wonderful singer too. We were talking about some of the harmonic possibilities on the album with three excellent singers.
Well, I mean, that's what I've been doing today, putting together 3-part harmonies. That's
you have been? All right.
Definitely, yes. No, it's already done. That's what we're doing. I had about a 30-minute conversation with Steve today about that entire setup, because we were wondering if Steve should sing his own harmonies on the album, or whether we should keep it true and I'll do one and Tom will do one. and we decided to keep it a three-piece, so that so when we go to play live, it will sound exactly the same live as it does on the record.
And that is and that's the next point. You are just anticipating. I was going to say that if Steve sang harmony to himself, then it would be a different experience live. But with you, all three of you being such fine singers and putting together the three-part harmony sound, then you're just ready to play it out.
Yeah, I think so. And it's right what you say about Tom, because I went to see Tom play with his band live down in Brooklyn in New York City, and that's the first thing that struck me. What an incredible singer he is. Tom's a great singer too,
Yeah.
He's got a good voice. So I think between the three of us, we should be able to bang out some cool harmonies, I think.
I think so too. And that's one thing which is interesting. Tom mentioned that I wanted to get his impressions of some of the different sounds that are coming out, and he mentioned an Americana sort of a sound. He said it's very interesting. I'll quote him. He said, "I'm the only American born in America out of Steve and Francis." And but he says there's a definite Americana sound, and so we joked a little bit about the maybe is it going to be a barbershop sound.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know the song he's talking about, because what happened is that there was the guy whose studio we were at. He's one of them guys who's got like about 50 million guitars in his cupboard, and so he pulled out this banjo, and I'm just like, I hadn't played a banjo for about 15 years, so I put banjo on the end of it, so that's probably what Tom's talking about.
Well, that's wonderful, and Steve and I have talked about he's starting to listen to Americana music more himself, and that and just the different sounds that are going to be on the album. Would you characterize it now? You were involved, of course, with Indestructible. Is this going to be a break from that sort of sound, given the fact that, of course, Steve's lyrics and his vocals are, of course, the tie-in, but the actual structure of the songs and the feel of the album, is it going to be a break with Indestructible? Or are people going to hear something very different? Or are they going to hear clearly the next in a series that's Indestructible will be the first one, and this one definitely follows from it?
I think it's the album's definitely got its own sound, and I don't think it'll sound anything like Indestructible.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think that I think in terms of where Indestructible was aiming at, I think this is far more focused around Steve. And I think that what people, Steve's voice sounds something like Seal or something like that. That's how I hear him. I hear him, and his vocals are going to be that prominent on this record. They're going to be very, 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 very upfront. They're going to be very loud, and they're going to be very, and so what you're going to say when you put the CD on is not like, "Hey man, those musicians are great." You're going to say, "Wow, that guy's got an incredible voice."
What keeps me coming back to listening to Indestructible is Steve's voice. I'll say that right. I'll say that right there.
I've always been involved in progressive rock since I was a kid. I was a massive, massive Genesis fan when Peter Gabriel and was with Genesis in the early 70s.
We share that, yes.
And even up to like Wind and Wuthering, and a couple of tracks on Then There Were Three that I could still handle. But that early Genesis stuff for me, as far as progressive rock was concerned, it never really got any better than that for me, in terms of just like how special that was. That was just such a really remarkable thing.
I agree so much with you on that. Peter Gabriel and those early Genesis albums, Trespass and Foxtrot, and
they're unbelievable.
Just wonderful stuff.
So I think it's I think one of the things that people, when they say they're making progressive rock, it's like what they're actually doing is kind of copying what happened back then. So the word progressive, it seems to have become, an excuse to have like an 18-minute long guitar solo, but it actually, a lot of the guys running around doing progressive rock, it seems to be if they have a song that's like 9 minutes long, then they think that's progressive rock. But in actual fact, the beauty of the musicianship and the togetherness of some of those bands back then was what made it progressive. They were actually being progressive. There was nobody sounding like Genesis back then.
No.
Oh yes, like bands like there was a lot of bands back then, but they were truly progressive. So I think in that sense, this will be a progressive album. In that sense, is that we've actually taken it's a very beautiful album. This, I'll tell you, it's very, very, very beautiful.
As Steve liked to call it, prog modernist sound. This will be the next step in the prog modernist continuum, I guess you could say.
Well, there's 3 generations on the CD. That's pretty interesting, because Steve's generation, them guys, and I've been an astrologer for 16 years, so they are what they call the Pluto and Leo generation, and them guys are, all the guys from Yes, Genesis, Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, the main explosion of rock in the 70s. My generation, I'm 45, so my generation are the Pluto Virgos, and Tom is the Pluto in Libra, so we've all got, we're all spanning by about, 15 years in age, and that's what's really interesting about this, putting the 3 generations together and seeing, the result of that. It's remarkable, really. But no, because when you actually pay attention to it, you can hear it, because you can hear Tom, Tom's on a different planet than me and Steve, and I am from, and we're all on different planets, but we can all see each other. It's quite interesting.
Wow, and of course, as you say, you are well known in astrology. You can sort of have a meta view of what's going on in the process there.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. Now we've covered the fact that Steve's vocals are going to be the focus of the album, which of course his lyrics are going to be prominent. Now, as far as your own musical role, step out from behind the production board here. What do you see yourself doing with your own instrument to frame Steve's voice?
Well, I think I'm one of my strengths as a guitar player is that I have a very, very, very solid finger picking technique, and I have a very, very, very solid rhythm guitar that I've ever since my early days when I played in R&B bands back in London, and I was having to learn kind of like soul music and R&B music, and back then in the 70s, 80s. I've always had a very, very, very strong rhythm guitar, and my job, I think, is to just keep everything together rather than letting the drums do it, because there's loads of places on this CD where the drums drop out. There's no drums at all. There's just beautiful piano and acoustic guitars going on, and it needs held down, and I think that's my role there. I'm like a center point that everybody can look at, and that guitar will be locked in time, and it'll be holding everyone down.
Now, is Steve going to stand with, like he did on most of when toward What's Indestructible? He had a guitar sometimes in his hands, but is he mostly going to just be behind the mic and putting all his attention into his vocals? And
yeah, Steve doesn't need to worry about the guitar. That's there's no point Steve to play guitar because he won't need to. And the things that's on the album are sometimes they're so intricate that he probably couldn't play them anywhere.
Right.
In the nicest possible way. I don't mean that much.
Right. Well, everybody goes with what they do best, and Steve is a writer and a singer. And
just stand out the front and be great.
Yeah. Now, and we're not going to talk too long because I want you to get back and make some more of that great music. Has Steve wandered down yet, or is he in the background there, or what's he?
Hang on, I'll get him down from his tea.
Yeah, sure.
Steve, come on, have you finished drinking tea? Come on, these guys want to talk to you. I told them you sent me down here to do all the work. I just played him table tennis as well. He's a terrible table tennis player.
Oh, he's told me about his tennis, and of course his son being a world-class squash player.
That's very true, but he just gets whooped in here at table tennis, because I am the man.
You are the man in table tennis?
Well, my friend, the guy who runs my fan club in England, he's the British champion, so I've had lessons from the... okay. I can whoop anybody that comes into the house.
Ooh.
But Steve, here's Steve. All right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Okay.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to speak to you, too. The reason that Francis beats me at table tennis is because he's an absolute ace player.
Yeah, well, your game is more lawn tennis.
I'm a tennis player, yeah.
Yeah, so...
That's my excuse for getting beaten, anyway.
Now, let me ask you this. Does Francis play the American grip, or does he use the Japanese and Chinese grip?
That is a much too technical question for me.
Well, it's the chopsticks grip. In other words, he holds the racket...
No, I think he plays with the American
grip, or English grip, however you want to put it. Well, I have been hearing... I've talked with Tom earlier this evening, and now I'm going to be finishing up with Francis, and I just wanted to touch base with you. There's a lot of really good vibes coming out of both Tom's experience and Francis with this new album, Big Sky. Steve, I got to tell you, you got two very, very psyched core members here.
Yeah, no, we're excited. It's the synergy between us has been fantastic. They are both, as I mentioned to you before, and I think you probably already know, they are both absolutely extraordinary musicians and talents. They're both great singers as well, of course, but they're great musical heads. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the difference in generations, Tom is kind of a new generation, sort of. And then Francis, and then me as the old sage, if you like. The interesting thing was the synergy between us has really worked, and getting Francis to produce has been my masterstroke in this album, because he's the most incredible producer.
I agree. I've been delving. I knew I owned the Gully Flats Boys before I knew about this project, but I've been listening to his earlier stuff too. And you are right. Francis is an awesome producer.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah,
and also an absolutely brilliant guitarist and singer.
Oh yeah.
In his own right, and musician. I mean, we
all around
tracks today where he's been working on the keyboards and doing some amazing stuff.
Now, I will say this. Did you hear what he was telling me about your voice?
I was upstairs having a huge piece of carrot cake.
Oh, well, your voice. Well, don't do anything to stuff up your vocal cords, because Francis was telling me that your voice is what's going to drive this album. You are going to be out front and up center. It's a Steve Nardelli vocal show here. He just thinks you are an awesome singer, and I've been saying that for a while now. You know that from the forums and from other things. Your vocals are unique. They're wonderful. They're smooth, and so what do you think about that? He has a lot of he's planning his production around your vocals.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, the thing is what we've done so far, and the amount of work we're putting in a relatively short amount of time, is the results that are coming at the other end are really exciting. That's all I can say. It's really exciting, and I know that this is going to be a great album.
And it's going to translate really well live, because Francis was also telling me that it's not going to be you singing harmony to yourself. There's going to be a true 3-part harmony that he's going to put together.
Yeah, and the harmonies we'll be working on today, we've done some fantastic harmonies.
Fantastic.
I'm very excited. I'm thrilled, actually.
Very good. Well, I'm going to let you. Do you have any carrot cake left, or did you eat it all as you went down the stairs?
No, I think the girls are upstairs tucking into it now. There won't be much left now, but I've had one piece. That's enough. I'm going to do some more singing tonight. So
good. Well, I'm going to let you get back to that, and finish up with Francis. Great talking to you, Steve, and we'll of course do a lot more coming up soon. Steve Nardelli, folks.
Hello.
Yes. All right. Well, I told him all the great things that you were talking about. I've told him a lot about his vocals for years, but he hadn't heard anything that you were saying upstairs. He was eating the carrot cake. So it sounds like things are moving along wonderfully. I'm going to let you guys get back to what you do best. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell my audience about the album that we haven't touched on tonight?
No, I think it's going to be a very difficult album to not like. To be honest, it isn't. There's nothing going to rub anybody up the wrong way. I don't think there's any. It's just it's going to be just more purely Steve. I think you're going to get more of that, more of Steve Nardelli's voice and his melodies and stuff. So you know what? I just think everybody will really love the record. I really do. Just for the songs, it's like they're really, really great songs he's written.
Or as Steve would say, brilliant.
Absolutely.
This has been Steve Sykes Nova with another conversation from the farmhouse. Actually, part 2 of a doubleheader with Tom Brislin leading off, and Francis Dunnery with special guest Steve Nardelli ending up tonight. Folks, I'll see you on down the road. Good night, Francis.
Good night, Steve. Thank you, my friend.
You're very welcome.